So to wrap up our class time today, I want to answer that question. ¿Qué hora es? Well, the title of our show means what time is it? I want to take numbers that we just learned and teach you how to use them in a different context. And that is how to state what time it is. And later on, we'll get into at what time something happens. But right now, let's talk about how to say what time it is right now. So when you ask someone what time is it, you already know that. ¿Qué hora es? What time is it? Now, if you're answering that question, there are two ways we need to say that. First of all, we can say son las. That's one way to say it is when you're talking about time. And then we have es la. Another way to say it is when you're talking about time. Now let me go ahead and tell you, you're always going to use son las to say it is a certain hour unless you're saying it's one something. That's the only time we use es la, is if you're saying it's one something, like 1 o'clock or 1:15 or 1:30. Then we would say es la, and we're not going to say uno. You might be saying, well, one is uno, but you're right. But the problem is that we have to change it a little bit to una, because we're talking about time, and the word for time is hora, and that's feminine, so therefore this word has to match it. So that's why we say una instead of uno. Okay? So it's 1 o'clock, es la una. Now, if we want to say it's any other hour, we just simply say son las. So if we want to say it's 2 o'clock, we say son las dos. If we want to say it's 4 o'clock, you guessed it, son las cuatro. How would you say it's 6 o'clock? Son las seis. Now, we already know how to say all the hours in just the last minute or two. We can state any hour. But now let's take it and talk about how we do minutes. This is where we're going to need to sort of split the clock into two parts. Now, if we think about the first half of the hour, when the minute hand goes to the 30 mark, we're simply going to say y. So for example, if it is 2:10, if it's 2:10, all you got to do is remember it's 2 and 10. Okay, so we're going to say son las 2:10. Now for 30, let's say for example it's 4:30. We don't say 30 when we're talking about time. We're going to use the word media. Now I'm going to put it over here so we can do an example here. Media means half. So if we want to say it's 5:30, we would say son las 5:30. Now, what happens with the rest of the hour? Once we pass that 30 mark, we start getting up to approaching the next hour. A lot of times we're going to go ahead and use that next hour as our reference. We do this in English all the time. If it's 8:50, we also say it's 10 till 9. Think that way. Go ahead and say it's 9 o'clock just minus a certain number of minutes. So let me show you what I'm talking about on the board. If it were, let's say 8:50, okay, it's getting close to 9. So we're going to go ahead and say it's 9 just minus 10 minutes, okay? Now the word for minus in Spanish, I'll put it right here as a reference, is menos. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and say it's 9 o'clock minus 10. All right, so son las 9 menos 10. So let's try one really quick to wrap things up. I don't want to trick you here, but watch this one. If it's 12:50, it's approaching 1 o'clock. So we're going to go ahead and say it's 1, just minus 10. So how do you say it's 1? Not son las, right? Es la una menos 10. Okay? Now here's one last thing I need to tell you about stating time. those quarters. We know how to say half, we know how to say the hour, but what happens if it's a quarter after? We do the same thing in Spanish. Sometimes we'll say 15, but a lot of times we'll say a quarter. Now, let's put it right over here at the top where we can see it. A 15 or quarter is cuarto. Now, it looks a lot like cuatro, but flip your R and your T. It's cuarto. It means quarter. So, if we wanted to say it is 7:15, we could say son las 7:15. Or if it was 7:45, that would be 8 minus the 15. So, son las 8 menos cuarto. Okay? Now, at this point, with your number knowledge and your knowledge about time, you are ready to answer that question. ¿Qué hora es? For our Cultura section today, I wanted to talk about time in other countries. Since we're learning how to state time and at what time things happen, I thought it would be appropriate to talk about some time differences around the world. Now, first thing is Americans can find a lot of frustration in other countries. Arrival times can be quite different, and your understanding of when to arrive can be quite different. In many other countries, when a time is stated, a lot of times the person in the other country might think that that arrival time is tentative. So if you say, we're going to meet at 7:30 in the morning, in a lot of countries, that means around that time. So it can be very frustrating for people like me who keep a tight schedule. You might find yourself waiting 30 minutes or an hour for that person to arrive or for the meeting to start, when in their minds, that's a rough time estimate. Now, arrival times in Spanish-speaking countries can be different as well in terms of when to arrive at a dinner invitation. For example, in Peru, if you're invited to dinner, that invitation is probably going to be for 9 o'clock. Now that's quite different for us because we generally say dinner's at 6 or 7, but in Peru, your dinner invitation is probably going to be for 9 o'clock if you're invited to a Peruvian home. Here's the thing, don't arrive at 9 o'clock. It is customary to arrive at least 30 minutes late. So if your invitation is at 9 o'clock, don't arrive at 9 o'clock. Arrive at least 30 minutes late. Now, you'll find some differences in Spain as well. Here, our restaurants are in full swing at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. In Spain, a lot of the restaurants don't even open till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And they are in full swing, their busy time, at 11 p.m. So if you visit Spain, you might want to adjust your clock and your sleeping times a little bit, especially if you plan to go out to eat. Okay, friends, that wraps up this episode of ¿Qué hora es? Until I see you next time, if you have a question or a comment, feel free to send me an email at quehoraes@aibtv.com. I'd love to hear from you. And in the meantime, I wish for you paz y bendiciones to you and your family and friends. We'll see you next time on ¿Qué hora es? Hasta pronto.